Welcome to Pass the Torch, where we ignite purpose, passion, and potential in early childhood development, one conversation at a time. Hi, I'm Diane from At Love to Create Educational Platform, and we are very excited to bring another episode to you about curriculum development and early childhood development. And we have a lovely guest, Felicity Diedrichs, with us from EduHope. But before we go to our ad break, I really would like to thank Isel from Lurie Rest Cabins in Victoria Bay in George for this lovely venue. And we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everyone. And in the studio today, or in our podcast today, is Felicity Diedrich. And she is the founder of EduHope. And I think we're going to have a lovely discussion today, especially about curriculum development. But welcome, Felicity, to our podcast. And thank you for your time. And I really want to start the conversation by tell us more about Felicity Diedrich and EduHope, and where did it all start?
Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast. And like you said, my name is Felicity Diedrichs, and I'm the founder of EduHope. And EduHope, what I actually did, I started to write a curriculum for preschool kids, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and later on grade R. And I also do training and for teachers. But just a little bit about myself. I'm a grandmother. I have 4 beautiful grandkids. And I always had a passion for kids. And I think that's also why I started to invest, if I can say invest, into early childhood development.
Oh, that's lovely. You also got a passion for early childhood development like myself. And I think that's why you've started this and started to develop, to live out your passion. And the potential is also of early childhood development. What would you say, what inspired you to step into the field of early childhood development?
I always had a passion for small children, and I do believe the earlier you start with kids, the better the outcome will be later on. And I was actually a grade 1 teacher and a grade 2 teacher before I went to early childhood. And grade 1 is a lovely age to teach, because when they into the school, it's like a blank canvas, that you can work with. And then at the end of the year, it's a beautiful painting, and you were part of that. And that's what really inspired me also about kids, to see the change and the fulfillment, to know that you were part of that. And then I became a principal in a preschool teacher in Pretoria in 1998. And in the primary school, everything is structured. You have your curriculum, you know exactly what to do, you have your daily program, so it's very, very structured. So then I went to the pre-primary, and the first meeting I had with the staff members, I asked them, okay, can I please have your files for your lesson plans? And they looked at me. And the grade R teacher actually said, you know what, we don't have lesson plans, it's all in our head. And then I realized that there's a big gap, and that I can be part of changing the way that the preschool teachers think. So then I really saw a big gap in curriculum development.
Yeah, I love when you said earlier that you start on a blank piece of paper, and I can actually refer back to, for myself, also being in the teaching profession, but also going into the ECD sector about a few years ago and having a preschool. I think if I must go back into teaching now, I would do it in a different perspective, because you learn such a lot about the children's development per se. So it's lovely to actually get that child in, and as you said, at the end of the year or end of a phase, and they go over to grade R or next grade, or even in age, then you can see certain things just pop up, and I'm amazed with the natural way it actually happens, with obviously with stimulation and all that type of thing. So, and yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's such a privilege actually to work with children. And we had a previous podcast about personal development and how you actually also as a teacher grow through this whole process that you work with children. And I think it's a huge privilege to actually work and have the nature to work with children. What would you say?
You definitely do grow. You definitely grow.
Yes, for sure.
Like you said, that you will do things differently.
Yes,
and
yeah.
I feel the same. If I think of even the grade 1 class I had,
yes,
I will do a lot of things different than I did back then.
Yes, because you have the knowledge and the inspiration of what's behind the children, the behavior, the development, and I think you understand more about a child at the end of the day. Would you say that what would you say was your motivation to start EduHope?
Sorry, I just want to go back to this. Okay. What motivated me was in 2004, we went to Qatar in the Middle East. And I was a teacher there, and a grade art teacher. And when we had our meeting before the kids came to school, we had our meeting. And again, I asked them for lesson plans. What do you have? What do we teach these kids? Because there were 27 different nationalities in the school. And also, so they're all English second language. And what they gave me was actually a grade 1, if I can say, curriculum for the grade R and the 4 to 5. It was one thing they had. And when I looked at their daily program, it was exactly the same as the primary school. They had science, maths, English, Arabic, Quran. They had one art lesson a week and one gross motor lesson a week. And that was it. And even during break time, they went out with all these big kids. And then I went to the principal and I said, we can't do this with these small kids. We have to change. They have to have their own program. They need to have their own break time. And when the school actually started, the first day, it was all these small Arabic kids. It's not like in South Africa, hear English. They never hear English because everything is Arabic. The television, when you go to town, everything is Arabic. So when they come to school, it's the first time that they hear English is when you speak to them. So what happened is I had 24 little Arabic kids, and they couldn't understand me and I couldn't understand them. And later on, I just got them on the carpet and I sat with them and they cried. And they kept on saying, Habia Mom. And I didn't know what they want. It sounded like something like Mama. So I thought they want their mother. So I saw an Arabic teacher walk past and I asked her, what does this mean, Habia Mom? And they said that, she said that they want to go to the toilet. So that's the first time that I actually realized that we have to do something quick for the kids to understand English. I also learned some Arabic basic words so that I could understand them. And then I started to write a curriculum for these kids because we had the British curriculum, but it didn't actually work for them because British, it's first language. So I started to write a curriculum for these kids. And it was so fulfilling to see these kids after about 6 months. Then I could see how they started to understand and how they lit up and join in the classroom. And when the parents came to fetch them, these parents, lots of them can't speak English. So then they started to translate. So the parents will say something to them, they will translate it to us in English, and then we talk to the kids and they translate back to the mom. And at the end of the year, you could have a full conversation with these kids. And that really made such a difference. I realized that they are like sponges. You just have to work with them. And the most important thing for me for when I wrote the curriculum was the language. Because it's English second language, so you have to, the whole curriculum has to be about language development. Yes. And then in 2010, we came back to South Africa. And in 2011, I had a friend. She was an occupational therapist in Bloemfontein. And she worked with the students of the University of the Free State, the occupational therapist students. And they visited the townships like once a month, maybe twice a month. And then they asked me if I can join them and go with them. So I went with them and my heart broke. My heart really broke when I saw these kids. You know, when you walk into a classroom and there's nothing going on and the teachers look hopeless, they don't know what to do. And they don't have anything to work with. So I started with one school in the township, and I worked with them, and I introduced to them, first of all, you do need a year plan. And then I worked with them, let's see this year what you can do. Then I worked with them to say, okay, now we have the year plan, we know what we're going to do. So let's now do a daily program so that they know each minute of the day what they can do. And they told me, the teachers, when we sat and talked, they said that their kids have never, ever been accepted in the city schools because of the language. And I said, okay, because the teachers could speak English, all of them. So I said, okay, let's do the learning in English. I said, you can have, like in Katzal, I had one Arabic lesson a week. So you can have your Sesotho lesson, but let's focus on English. And then we did that. And you know what? You couldn't believe how it changed. After a couple of months, when I came to visit, I went there every month. I gave them stuff to do for the month. Then I went back again. And when I walked into the classroom, you could see the teachers' faces. You know, they were excited about teaching again. And they showed me, look what this kid can do, and look what this kid can do. And they showed me the phonics that I taught them. We'll talk about phonics later on. They showed me that. And that was so fulfilling. And that's when I realized South Africa needs a curriculum for South African kids.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you've developed it, because my next question, what do you believe in the ECD sector or education is really critical in our country right now? Besides the curriculum, but we can go into that again, but is there anything else in the ECD sector which is really critical in South Africa today?
To answer that question, I have to go back to 2009. That is when the National Curriculum Framework was rolled out. and they sent it to all the schools, and they had lots of training about the National Curriculum Framework. And I just want to read to you what they actually said that they want the teachers to do, or yeah. The NCF is one of the activities aimed at improving the quality of basic education by laying a solid foundation in the early years. The development of the NCF is a great achievement for our country, as it is the first document of its kind. This will ensure that children from different backgrounds in different settings have access to quality ECD services. The NCF will be used in a variety of settings and purposes to improve children's learning experiences, and it will also be used by training organizations, universities, practitioners, parents, and other caregivers to enhance children's learning and development. Now, this is what they want to achieve. But I read the NCF curriculum framework, and I also talked to one of the ladies from the education department who was part of writing this. And she kept on saying that this is a framework, but the teachers in their head, it was a curriculum, and they didn't understand anything. So I'm not saying it's bad. It's a very good framework of what the kids should know do in the pre-primary school. But the problem is that the teachers in the ECD sector are not qualified. If I can say 90% of them, I'm not talking about grade R now, but the younger ones, they're not qualified.
Yeah, I think there's quite a drive currently to have ECD practitioners qualified, or getting your NQF4 or NQF5. So there is a drive, but I think it's a very slow one. And I also think, if you come to think of it, if you say 20, yeah, it's actually, it's like the other day. And it's not far back that the ACCUS started focusing on early childhood development. And I think that's why I'm such an advocate for early childhood development, because there must be a real drive with all the sectors, all parts of early childhood development has to start focusing on different things, especially the education of the teachers and the assistants.
Yes. And the thing is, with this curriculum framework, if you give something like that to the teachers, they still don't know what to do. They still don't have they don't know how to do a year plan, a daily program, how to do the lessons.
Yeah, I think it's overwhelming. You get this framework or this draft, and then it's overwhelming. Where do you start? What do you do? What is important? How many aspects or skills must be built into a day or in a week or in a month to actually get to the point that it's actually a good program?
Yeah, I mean, even if you I mean, I was at the teacher college, and we trained as teachers, but the first year you started to teach, you don't actually know how to teach. It's something that you have to experience. And the thing is that nobody taught you how to write a lesson plan. So it was awesome. Like when I was a grade 2 teacher, I was first a grade 2 teacher, there was actually people who did that, and they helped us. So I think in the ECD sector, they need help, and they need help from people that has done it before. Yeah. And then I think it was in 2022, then the early childhood development moved from social development to the education department. And and then they said that this move aims to ensure better alignment between ECD and the formal school system, improve curriculum quality and consistency, provide better support and training for ECD teachers. And they have a vision for preschool by 2030. This strategy aims to ensure that every child has access to quality early learning opportunities, laying a strong foundation for lifelong learning and development. This is a beautiful thing to say, but we want that to happen in our country. And all of us know that it's not happening in our country. And I read an article in Marula Media where they said that 81% of grade 4 kids in South Africa can't read with comprehension. That's a huge number. And I believe if we can start early and help them to, about language, to develop their language, so that they actually know in grade 4, when they read something, they understand what they read.
That's right.
And I think 90+% of our kids in South Africa is second language learners. And so that's why that percentage is so high. And I really hope that the education department will come to the table and change our industry.
Yes, of course. And I think that's also why I'm doing this podcast, to make the awareness regarding early childhood development in different aspects. Because, as I said, for me, it's wonderful that there's a start. The statement is there, the vision is there, so we can just work from there on. And I think if we work together collectively, I think there will definitely come a change. It's going to be a long and slow process and a journey, but I think we'll get there at the end of the day. And I think it's people like you and I that could make a difference and educate people and be of value to people that actually need the help and the assistance. Right, we'll be back with our next discussion about the curriculum development. We're just going to go for an ad break. Welcome back, everyone, with our next segment about curriculum development. Felicity, our first question I would really like to ask you is, what gap or need did you identify that led you to develop your own ECD curriculum?
When I came back to South Africa, I looked at a lot of, when people say it's a curriculum, and it's lovely stuff. It's not that it's not going to help anybody. They were beautiful curriculums that I saw. It was all theme-based, that I love. But it doesn't tell the teacher, Monday you have to do this. Tuesday you have to do this, when to do the things. Because we have to remember we're working with people that has never done something like this before.
Yes, it's like creating a balance between all the skills that you have to work in.
Yes. So then I saw that there's actually a need in South Africa for South African kids. And lots of these curriculums are like American-based. Even the words that they teach kids is not words that we are using in South Africa, or some of them are British curriculum. And I know back in 2012, the lady from the education department told me that they bought a curriculum from Finland.
Yes, which we know is the number one in the world education-wise.
Yes. But again, it works for them. It didn't work for South Africa because, I mean, even in America, they have like 10 kids in a classroom and 2 assistants, a teacher and 2 assistants. Our people work with 24 to 40 kids in a classroom, 1 teacher. So we have to think of a curriculum that works for our South African teachers. So then I realized I need to do a step-by-step curriculum. And when it's a theme, I need to give them the posters. It should be there because they don't have these stuff. So then I gave them some posters, put it in the curriculum. And everything that they need. If it's a storybook, I write the storybook and it's there. A poem, a song, the art, I show them exactly how to do the art. What do they need to do the art? And mathematics, because in the pre-primary schools, when you walk into those schools, what they love to do is to write phonics and numbers. I mean, you'll see them with papers and they go practice the number 1 and number 2, and we don't need that. We need to teach them number value, colors, shapes, and to experience it through all their senses. And that's what I brought into the curriculum. So that's why I think it's different than other curriculums.
Yes. And can you just walk us through the development process that you've gone through? Where did you start and what principle guided you through this process?
I think I started in Qatar with this whole process of writing curriculums for the kids that you're working with. And then when I went to the township in Bloemfontein and worked there with some kids, I saw the need. And then I got a word in the Bible and it says, let's arise and build. And I knew it was for our kids in South Africa. We have to arise and build our nation. And that's when I started. I worked with a school in Cape Town. The lady is called Kelly Bywater. The school's name is Kiddylicious. And she was the pilot school. She also helped me with the 2 to 3s because she taught the 2 to 3s in Qatar. She was always also in Qatar, so she knew them better. And what we did, we developed 1 week, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. And we did like my body. And then we did everything around my body, the art, the music. And then what I did, because we're working with second language learners, I brought in phonics. Now, if you say the word phonics, people are already not happy with you because they say, why do you need to teach phonics? But it's not about teaching them the phonic. It's about the beginning, to hear the beginning word, sound of a word. And that's how I found out that you develop language through phonics. And so we had phonics in our lesson, and of course mathematics, fine motor skills. And then what we did, we wrote, and then it will go to her school, and her teachers will work through the curriculum. If they see that something is not working, they will tell me, and I will change it, and they will try it again, and then they said, yes, this is good, it's working.
And I love sorry if I can come back to the phonics part. I love how you integrated that into your curriculum, because that is what you said regarding language, and because it's a second language children. Even for first language, it's good to hear the sounds very early in their life.
Yes. And the interesting part is the school that we did the pilot, they are first language and second language learners. So we, both of them benefited from the phonics, not, to develop their language. And so we did that for 1 whole year. We had 38 weeks of lesson plans for the whole year. So then the next year I looked at all the art, because what we did while we developed the curriculum, we used lots of art from the internet, and we pasted it in there, because we worked at a very fast pace to do this. And so then I looked at the art, and I did every single art. I changed, I did it myself, see if it works. I took a picture and I put it into the lesson plan, so that I can make sure, even the fine motor skills lesson, we made sure that it's our stuff, we did it. Then the next year, so now it was the third year, then I went back to the 2-3 program, and I revised the whole program. I did that for one whole year. I worked with it every week. I worked with the 2-3s to see, is it working? What can we change? I also bought new clip art. I changed the pictures. I changed some of the stories that I wrote. The year after that, the fourth year, I did it the same with the 3-4s. The year after that, I did the same with the 4-5s, to revise everything and to make it new and to see what's changed in South Africa, what can we bring in. And the year after that, I did the Great Art program.
I can hear there's a lot of work in here, and it's a lot of trial and error.
It was really a lot of work. And then I started with a Great Art, because lots of schools that did my program asked, please, we need a Great Art program. So then I did a Great Art. What I did, I took the curriculum from the education department, and I made sure that I put everything in there that they want the kids to know. So I did that, and then I also brought my own stuff in the curriculum. And what we did there, we took a phonic each week, and I got writers from South Africa, and we wrote a storybook for each phonic. I also wrote some storybooks, but I have lots of writers that helped me with that, and we wrote South African stories, you know. So we wrote this, helped me to write the story. So with each phonic, there's a storybook. And then in one box, when a school buys a box, there's 4 weeks of lesson plans, week 1-4, for example. And then there's the storybooks with all the phonics. And in that box is also a wooden puzzle that EduNation in Bloemfontein printers do that for us. So we start with a 8-piece puzzle, week 1, and then in the last week, week 36, I'll tell you now why week 36, then there's a 36-piece puzzle. So they build up, you know. And about the 36, you remember I said we had a 38-week lesson plan? Lots of schools came back to us and they said they can't finish it because they have concert, they have Mother's Day, they have all of that. So we took away 2 weeks to make 36-week lesson plan. And so that's the journey we had. I also had an illustrator, and she really worked for nearly 2 years. She worked on the books with us, and afterwards I also revised the storybooks again, just to make sure that everything is correct. So it took a couple of years to do the curriculum. Yes.
Yeah, and that's why you are here, to tell our story, to tell your story, because at the end of the day, coming back to what we said, what is critical in our sector is that we need people like you educating and giving knowledge about, especially the curriculum, which is a very important part of children development. I think there's a lot of questions, you know. What teacher asks is that how much must I do in a week? What must I do and how I must do it? And you know, the owner or the teacher of the class must then educate the assistant as well, because the assistant has also got a huge role in the sector. That's very important. Can you maybe just give us the elders? That social development is also like a book that's talked about the elders. Can you just explain that to us, please?
Yes, so it's all about language development, mathematical skills, life skills. I know it's art, music and movement. So I've read that, the elders, and lots of schools will ask me, do you have the elders in your curriculum? And you can't build a curriculum without that, because it's very important, you know. So yes, I did bring that in all my lessons. It's there, and that's the problem with some schools. They're focusing on mathematics. That's one part of the elders. They're focusing on language development, where they actually, not in a good way. They do the phonics, but they let the kids write it. But they lack art, music, movement. It's so important for our preschools to do that. And so I believe that you have to incorporate all the elders in your curriculum.
Yes. And we can go into and say, actually just make a statement that there must be no workbooks in early childhood development.
No, definitely
no
not.
books. It must be play-based, and I'm sure that your curriculum is absolutely focused on that and regarding experience.
Yes.
That child's. So at the end of the day, if you can maybe just run us through the age group of the development stages, does your curriculum focus on?
I started with a 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and grade R. And then I also did a baby stimulation program. So the baby stimulation program is from 4 to 12 and 12 to 18 months. But it's different. It's different from the 2 to 3s. What we have, each child will get a book. And like say the baby is 6 months old. 6 months, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Then for each day, there's an activity that the teacher do with the baby. They write there how the baby responded to the stimulation program or activity. And then there's some art that they do with the babies, and they paste that in that book. Every Friday, the book go home to the parents, and in there is the milestones for the baby, so the parents can also read that. So there's some stuff to get the parents involved. And now I'm busy writing a 1 to 2 year program. Lots of schools asked me for that. So they also wanted like a daily program where you have, because you work with a whole class. I mean, there's lots of schools, they have lots of babies. So this stimulation program works maybe more for parents or for homeschools. But they asked me if I can do a 1 to 2 year old program. So I'm busy with that now. Yes.
Thank you so much, Felicity. And we're just going to be back in a short while, and then we're going to go on with our next discussion. Welcome back, everyone, for our third segment. And Felicity, what changes or improvement would you love to see in the ECD sector in South Africa?
I would really love for the education department to become involved, really involved in the ECD, and I really hope that they will see, because we know they all focus on year 12, the education department, and Because if they can just see what we see, that the earlier you start, the better it is. And then your outcomes will be so much better in year 12. And the other thing I would love to see is training happening. You know, I do give training, and I love to train teachers because they need training on classroom management, what to do in a class, what to teach, what is a year plan, what is a daily program. They need things like that. But the training that's currently happening are not helping teachers. That's what I believe. Because lots of these people that do the training, they use words that these teachers do not understand. So if they can focus on training, the education department can focus on that, I believe that we can then make a difference in South Africa. If the education department understands that it's important to work with they start at the early age, and also to train the teachers to become better teachers.
Yeah, and I think they actually said it in the statement that you read, is that if you focus or invest in early childhood development, you become a lifelong learner. And I think they are starting to look at that and to focus on that. But as I said, it's going to be it's a long and a slow process. But I also want to say is that they can also work collectively with people that's in the sector per se.
Yes, they can definitely.
And assist them with if it comes to training.
Yes, yes.
And make it basic and simple.
Yeah, it must be simple and basic for, I mean, even us, we are second language people. We our first language are not English. So, and that's something important in South Africa, is the second language thing. They keep on saying mother tongue language. They keep on saying that. And the thing is, if you had Sesotho universities or Xhosa or Zulu universities, then it would not be a problem. But we do not have those. So we have to change the learning to English. And if our country can just realize they will not lose their culture at all, because at your house you still speak your language, you do your religion, but in school we have to teach them so that they can be helped at university. And that's why we have the grade 4s that can't read with comprehension. That's the reason, because they do Sesotho and then suddenly they have to do English. It's difficult for a child to do that. And the other thing, I wish the education department would find a curriculum that works for our South African teachers and kids.
That's it. Yeah, that's a wonderful. That's something that must be spread out there to all the listeners, and everybody is going to look or listen to this podcast. What is your biggest dream or long-term vision for the role of EduHope?
Wow. My biggest vision is that the education department will take hands with us, with people like you and me, and to let all of us sit together and see how can we change our country? How can we change the education in South Africa? That is one of my biggest dreams. The other one is for the education department to work with people like us that actually do give training, and that we see an impact we have in the communities, and that they will say, let's develop a training that works for the teachers, that helps them, because at the end of the day, it will help the children of South Africa. So that is another big dream of mine. And the third one is for us to train teachers, to become trainers. And so the more trainers we have out there, the bigger the impact in our country.
And I'm so with you. you've said it very straight. That is the simple 2 or 3 things that we have to focus on. And that's what would you say is the advice you would like to give to an ECD educator or even owner of a preschool?
I think, first of all, you need to love children. If you don't love children, then you're in the wrong sector. So I think most important is to love children, to be patient. Yes, you're correct. You must be a caller. You can't think I'm going to get rich out of this. No, it's not going to happen. It must be yes. Your soul, yeah. Then you need to make learning fun. It's not about if we can think, and when I do training, I tell the people this. Let me first go back to, I tell them what is the definition of a preschool? And that is to combine learning with play. You can't only have play and you can't only have learning, you have to combine them. So they need to make it fun. And by fun, I don't say let them go outside and they just play all the time. No, it has to be constructive fun that you do. And then also listen and talk to the children and let them talk back to you. I mean, in lots of schools, when you go there, you see that the teacher stands in front and she talks the whole time. And I wish that they would do group work with the kids and ask
more engagement, asking questions,
yes,
bringing them into the learning process.
Yes, instead of them doing all the talking. So that's another thing. And also, I think it's important that owners of schools and teachers must keep on learning. I'm 61 years old. I still learn. So you have to go and read on which age group you teach. Go and read, get new ideas, get games to play in the classroom. So always keep on learning. And then I would also love to see the schools work with parents. And I want to tell you a quick story. In Qatar, the principal that was there, I asked her, can we please, when it's Mother's Day, can we please invite the mothers to come to the school? Because they've never done something. They didn't involve the parents at all. So she said, she was also from South Africa, but she said, it will never work. And I said, okay, if it doesn't work, then we tried. And she said, okay, do it. And then we invite the mommies to come. And it was the best day. They loved it. And then from then on, every year we did that. We invite the parents, the mommies for Mother's Day, and we gave them tea and cookies, and we did an art with them. They did it together with the kids. So get the parents involved. They want to be involved.
They want to be involved.
Yes.
They want to be part of their children's journey.
Yes. And also be a role model. I love when I do training to show them how they yell at each other there, And I said, then when the kids yell in the classroom, you are angry with them, but you are the role model. They see. And I told them that in break time, you can actually see yourself, because the little girls love to play teacher, and then you can actually see yourself. So I will say, be a good role model.
Yeah. And what would you say is the parents' involvement or the support they can give to early childhood development?
I will say that they have to, first of all, when they look for a school, they need to find a school where learning is actually happening. That's the important thing. And then I think it's also important in the communities, if the parents see that there's a school that's abusing kids or where learning is not happening, to report that to the education department. So, and then another thing like in my lesson plans, every week there's a parent letter. So, because with a parent letter, you get the parents involved in the child's learning. So they know exactly what the kids are learning. And lots of these parents, they're also struggling with English. So in my parent letter, when we do a phonics, I do have all the pictures there. I have the names of the pictures. I have the song that they're doing that week, the number, the color, and I have an activity for the 4 to 5s and the grade R that they can do with their parents. So that's how the parents then can become part of the learning process. And I think if the parents also, do that they become part of the child's school. And if there's a sports day, they should go. Whenever there's something, they should be part of it.
Absolutely. And Felicity, we're coming to an end, but where can people connect with you if they want to send you questions or information regarding whatever their needs are?
Okay, they can visit my website on www.ediohope.co.za. I also have an email address if they want to email me, phyllis@ediohope.co.za. Then they can also go on Facebook. There they will see a lot of what I post on Facebook. And if they want to contact me, they're always welcome, 078 459 8819.
Felicity, thank you for your time. Thank you for this wonderful discussion that we had today. And I'm sure somebody that was listening today is going to take something away. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, that was a lovely discussion with Felicity about curriculum development. And if you feel that you want to reach out to do a podcast with us, you're more than welcome. And we'll see you next time.